This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Okay, Bruchim Haba, welcome everyone. Tonight is our first shiur of the new season, Parsha Noach, and we're here for another season of shiurim. Rabbi Shalom should give us siyata d'shmaya to show us mitayrasai neflais. Okay, so we Parsha Noach. So, what do we want to talk about? Food. Everybody wants to hear about food, right? It's not enough to eat food. You want to learn about food also. Okay, so we'll learn about food. So in Parshas Noach comes out of the Teva, and the first thing Hashem tells him is what his diet's going to be, right? No, Noach was not Jewish, but still, the first thing Hashem tells Noach was what could he eat? Anything that moves and is alive, you could eat. Kiyerek esev, like the vegetation of that which grows. Nasati lachem es koil. I've given you everything. And Rashi explains that Adam Arishon was not allowed to eat meat. The only thing Adam Arishon was allowed to eat was yerek esev, was vegetation, things that grew from the ground. Adam Arishon was a full-fledged vegetarian, but he had to. It was imposed on him. So the only thing Adam Arishon was allowed to eat was yerek esev. So Hashem tells Noach, listen Noach, until now mankind couldn't eat meat, but ki yerek esev, just like I allowed Adam Arishon to eat vegetation, nasati lochem es koil, I give you everything. That's right. Hashem tells Noach, when Adam Arishon was eating vegetables, I allow you to eat everything. It's almost like Adam Arishon, when he eat meat, it was like he was eating vegetables, right? He had the best of both worlds. So it was mamish olam haba. But that's the meaning of the pasuk. Just like I gave vegetables to Adam, I've given you everything. Okay. So now let's go back. Is that in fact the case, that Adam Arishon was not allowed to eat meat? That's quite remarkable. That Adam Arishon cannot eat meat. And in fact, take a look at number 3. Let's go back to the Psukim in Bereshis. Hashem tells Adam Arishon also what he's allowed to eat. Vayomer Elokim. Hashem said, I have given you all herbage that produces seeds. Asher apnei kol haaretz, that's on the face of the earth. V'ez kol ha'etz asher boi pri'etz zarei azara, and every seed yielding fruit. Lachem yiyeh la'achla, you could eat it. So it doesn't seem like Adam Arishon's diet was too extensive. All he could eat was grass, vegetables, fruits. Most people couldn't survive an hour like that, right? But Adam Arishon, that was his whole diet. His whole diet was Esev, pre-Eitz. Okay, no wonder he ate from the Eitz Hadas. No, just okay. Ulchol chayas haaretz, and all the animals. Ulcholoif hashamayim, ulchol roimes al haaretz, asher boi nefesh chaya, and to all the animals, guess what the animals could eat? As kol yerek esav la'achla, they could also only eat vegetables. Says Rashi that the original man, Adam Arishon in Gan Eden, his diet and the diet of the animals were the same thing. They ate the exact same things. They all ate vegetables, says Rashi. Hishva lohem behemois bechayois lamachal. God equated Adam to the animals and the wild animals in terms of their food. V'lo hirsha la'adam u'le'ishtai lahamis beria b'lechol basar. Hashem did not allow Adam to kill an animal and to eat meat. All they could eat, everybody, all mankind together with the animals, they were one big happy family. They all shopped in the same stores. So let's say you go into the grocery store, you saw Adam, you saw Chava, you saw elephants, they're all waiting online. They're all checking out the same thing. The food stamps, everybody got the same thing. The same pepper, the same onion, everybody had the same diet. There's no meat in the cholent, right? Even though there's no such thing as meat, a cholent without meat. It's not a cholent, but whatever they did. Okay, so that's the opinion of Rashi. Now, how do we know that Adam Arishon was not allowed to eat meat? It doesn't say Adam can't eat meat. All it says is Hashem gives Adam the fruits and the vegetables. Well, the Gemara in Masechta Sanhedrin, on Daf Nun Tes Amud Beis, the Gemara says clearly that it's not just, well, Hashem gave Adam fruits and vegetables, and by inference we could figure out He did not give Adam meat. No, read the pasuk carefully, says the Gemara. Look at number 5. Says the Gemara, Masechta Sanhedrin, Amar Rabbi Yehuda Amar Rav, Adam Harishain Laihuter Loi Basar La'achila. Adam Harishain was not allowed to eat meat. Now look carefully. Let's examine the psukim in number 3 one more time. Hashem says to Adam, I've given you as kol esav zarei azara, v'yas kol ha'etz asher boi prietz zarei azara, lachem yiyeh la'achla. It's to you to eat. The Gemara says, and read the next 3 words. Ulachol chayas haaretz. I'm giving you, Adam, vegetables, and to the wild animals. And says the Gemara, you read it like this. Lachem yiyeh la'achla ulachol chayas haaretz. I'm giving you and the animals the vegetables, but I'm not giving you the animals. That's how you read the pasuk. Says the Gemara, Lachem yiyeh la'achla ulachol chayas haaretz, v'loi chayas haaretz lachem. I'm giving vegetables to the animals, but I'm not giving you the animals to you. So from there, we see clearly God was telling Adam, no meat. And no meat means no flanken either. Okay? Nothing. No meat at all. But, says the Gemara, when Noach comes out of the teva, Hashem permitted the meat, like the pasuk says, Ki yerek esev nasati lochem es kol. Okay. Before we embark on tonight's voyage, I want to speak out a machlokes, Rashi and the Ramban. For a Jew to understand Chumash, you have to know Rashi and the Ramban. The Ramban is a fundamental limud on simple explanation of the psukim. And there is a machlokes, which is not so well known, between Rashi and the Ramban regarding the diet of Adam HaRishon in comparison to the animals. Rashi says very clearly that they all ate the same things. They all ate grass, fruits, vegetables. However, the opinion of the Ramban is, the Ramban says, wait a second. There are 2 psukim. Look back at number 3. There's pasuk Chavtes and pasuk Lamed. Pasuk Chavtes is addressed to Adam. Adam's diet, Hashem says, Esev, Eitz, Asher Boi Prietz. But the animals are only given Esev. Says the Ramban, there is a difference between Adam's diet and the animal's diet. You can't say that the animals and Adam HaRishon all ate the same thing before the Mabel. No. The Ramban's opinion is, Adam could eat fruits, Adam could eat vegetables, Adam could eat grass. But the animals before the Mabel could only eat grass. No fruits and no vegetables. Okay? And says the Ramban, Rashi is going to have to learn in Pasuk Lamed that the words ulachol chayas haaretz, ulachol oifa shamayim, ulachol roimes ala haaretz, asher boi nefesh chaya, es kol yerek. It should say v'es kol yerek esav la'achla. According to Rashi, where these 2 psukim are just being merged together, that the animals and Adam, and they all eat the same thing, then es does not come out very good. Es, no pun intended on the es. Es is a Hebrew word, right? But says the Ramban, no. Pasuk Chavtes is the diet for Adam HaRishon. Pasuk Lamed is the diet for the behemoths and the chayes. Okay. And now we begin. And the question that we want to address first is, why was Adam HaRishon not allowed to eat meat? What, there's something wrong with eating meat? Why didn't Hashem allow Adam HaRishon to eat meat? So says the Ramban enters into a philosophical understanding of what an animal is. You know, you have 2 extremes. You have people who do not value animals at all. People who at a whim will kill or torture an animal. And then we have a PETA. PETA. What's PETA? People for the ethical treatment of animals. Right? They say many of us grew up eating meat, wearing leather, and going to circuses. But for whatever reason, we never considered the impact of these actions on the animals involved. And PETA's slogan is, when it comes to pain, love, joy, loneliness, and fear, a rat is a boy, a pig is a boy, a dog is a boy. Each one values his or her life and fights the knife. Azoy zakt pida. And the question is, what is the Torah's perspective on the rights or lack thereof of animals? Do animals have rights? What are our responsibilities toward animals? Are we allowed to use them at will? So the Ramban says something very important. Do animals have an neshama? No, absolutely not. An animal does not have a soul. Only mankind has a soul. Vayipach bi'apav nishmas chaim. However, the Ramban says something very important. Animals have a nefesh. And their nefesh has a certain quality to it. And that quality is remotely comparable to the nefesh of an Adam. And, says the Ramban, they also have a degree of free will. Not free will to choose between right and wrong, but they have free will to preserve their life, to choose their food, and to run away from pain. And the pasuk even says in Koheles, Mi yoidea ruach b'nei adam ha'olahi lamala v'ruach ha'behema ha'yeredes lamata la'aretz. So we see animals have a spirit. They don't have a divine spirit, but there is an intangible quality to the animal. That intangible quality does not ascend upon its demise, it descends to the earth. So it's physical. And therefore Hashem says to Adam, you can't eat meat. You have to value, you have to honor, you have to respect the life of an animal. However, when all flesh, human and animal, corrupted their ways, and God was going to destroy the whole world, and the only reason God saved the animals was in the zchus of Noach, so then it comes out the animal's whole right to existence is dependent on man. Noach devoted himself to save the animals. Therefore God says, as a reward, Noach, you are being rewarded. You could eat animals. Because after all, without you, they wouldn't be here at all. However, God didn't go so far to say that Noach could eat the nefesh of an animal, and therefore Adam was not allowed to eat Eiver Menachai. Right? If Adam saw a cow walking down the street, he couldn't, even if he was very hungry, bite into it. Even though the animal is most juicy while it's still alive. Nevertheless, Adam Arishon, Noach was not allowed to do that. But he was allowed to kill an animal and eat it. But then comes Klal Yisrael, and God wanted to distance Klal Yisrael even further from the nefesh of a behema. So Hashem says, look, you can't eat dam, because the nefesh of the behema, right, ki damai benafshay, and before you eat a behema, what do you have to do? You shech the behema. Where do you shech the behema? By the neck. That's where the lifeblood is. When you shech the behema, almost all the lifeblood is drained from the animal. There's no more nefesh at all in the animal. And, says the Ramban, that is why you make a bracha on the shechita, because heaven forbid to consume the nefesh of a behema. And says the Ramban, that is why there's a principle enunciated in Shas, Tsar Balei Chayim D'Oraisa. It is a biblical prohibition to inflict pain on an animal. So if somebody was bored, and he had a dog, and he wanted to torture a dog, and take a bat, and club the dog, Iber and Cup, club the dog, just for fun, is that a bad thing to do? Is that an immoral thing to do? Is it unethical? It's more than that. It's an Isser D'Oraisa. Cannot inflict pain on an animal. And that's what the Gemara in Bava Metzia says. Look at number 7. That the Gemara talks about two opinions. There are two mitzvahs that you could do. You could see your friend walking down the street with a donkey. And one donkey needs to be loaded, te'ina. And one donkey needs to be unloaded, parika. And the Gemara says, which mitzvah is more important? Helping your friend load his donkey, or helping your friend unload his donkey? Says the Gemara, everybody agrees, it's a bigger mitzvah to unload the donkey, because when the donkey is laden, it's in great pain. Tsar balei chayim d'oraisa. If the animal needs help loading, the animal's not in pain. But if the animal needs help unloading, so the animal's in tsar, everybody agrees tsar balei chayim is d'oraisa. And in fact, there's a machlokes rishonim. From where in the Torah do we derive the principle that Sar Balei Chayim is d'oraisa? So Rashi in Masechta Shabbos Kuf Chav Ches Amud Beis says, we learn it from the pasuk, Azov Ta'azov Imai, that if you see a donkey, you see a ferret, and his back is breaking, and he's sweating. You never saw a donkey sweat like this. The donkey is ois donkey, not ois mensch, and so you have a mitzvah to help him. Why? From here we derive Sar Bali Chayim D'Oiraisa. The Meir in Masechta Bava Metzia says no, that's not the source. The source is, it says Loi Sachsoim Shar B'Dishai. Do not muzzle your ox when you thresh. Why? Why can't you muzzle? Because it causes him tsar. He's working, he's laboring, he's hungry. You can't cause him tsar. By the way, it's not on the sheet, and maybe we'll get into this a different time. The Rambam writes in Mar Nevuchim that the source for Tsar Bali Chayim is out of the mouth of the donkey himself. When Bilam's donkey says to Bilam, Lama hikisani zeh shalosh pa'amim. Why'd you hit me? Right? That's the source according to the Rambam. Okay. And even though some asked, the Rambam elsewhere says Tsar Bali Chayim is only d'Rabbanan. So okay, that's for a different share. Tsar Bali Chayim goes so far. Listen to this. There's a rabbinic prohibition on Shabbos of muktzah. You can't move. You can't write on Shabbos. You can't move a pen. It's an Isser D'Rabbanan. How important is an Isser D'Rabbanan? How much money does a Jew have to give up not to be over the Isser of muktzah? All your money. An Isser D'Rabbanan, it's brought down, Shulchan Aruch, you have to give up all your money not to be over an Isser. So here your cow fell into a pit. And the cow Nebuch, he's crying. Oi! Oi, the cow's saying. And you feel bad for the cow. So you want to take a pillow, a mattress, throw it into the pit, and maybe the cow will be, figure out how to get on top of the pillow, and eventually he'll get out of the pit. So you want to start throwing pillows into the pit. Not at the cow. Throwing into the pit. The problem is, the Gemara says, that if once you put it into the pit and the cow stands on it, this pillow now becomes muktzah. It's like a basis. And you're now to create muktzah on Shabbos. It's called mevatel kli mehechanai. So the question is, in order to save the cow from suffering, are you allowed to violate the Isser D'Rabbanan of muktzah? So you'd say, muktzah? You're going to violate muktzah to help a cow? I mean, what planet did you come from? Cows would have to jump over the moon before, right? No, the Rosh Paskins, halach l'maisa, that if you have an animal in Sar, you're allowed to violate certain dinim of muktzah. You know why? Muktzah is only d'Rabbanan. Tsar Bali Chayim is d'Oraisa. Muktzah is only rabbinic. Saving an animal from suffering is biblical. Paskins the Rosh halach l'maisa. You could throw the pillow, the mattress into the pit. Okay, Rabbi say? We take it. Okay. So it comes out that Tsar Bali Chayim is a serious thing. It's an Isser D'Oraisa, and it could even have the strength to push off more lenient prohibitions. So what we want to discuss tonight is, well, what if there are certain medical procedures that are undetermined, or certain medications that we don't know, are they effective or not? Are they beneficial or harmful? So we want to experiment with an animal. Are you allowed to experiment with cosmetics? Right? You don't know. Does this cosmetic? Does this makeup? Does it cause any skin conditions? Does it cause irritation? Does it cause allergic reaction? So you put the makeup on a cat. You put the makeup on a mouse. And you see if the mouse's eye is, let's say, quadruple in size, then you know maybe this is not the best kind of makeup. Or let's say you have a medication. You don't know is it safe or not. So you give the medication to a dog. If the dog drops dead immediately, maybe the FDA won't approve it. Maybe yeah, maybe no. All right? But the medication that they do approve, is usually dangerous. So certainly the medication that. Okay, so that's the question. Are you allowed to experiment with animals? Do we say you can't experiment with animals? Tsar Bali Chayim is arrest. What are you going to start, putting makeup on the dog's eyelids? The dog wants to sleep. The dog wants to fetch. Now you're going to start. That's the question. So, there's a Ramah. The Ramah in Even Ho'ezer, in Siman Hey, Sif Yadalad. Get a load of this. Says the Ramah, Kol davar hatzarech l'refuah. anything that you need for medical reasons. Or any other human need. Les be mishum iser tsar balei chayim. Tsar balei chayim is waived, it's dismissed, there is no such thing as that. You know where animal rights end? When your need begins. That's all. If you need something, but what do you mean? The Ramban says the behema has a nefesh. The behema, it's in the dam, Ever Menachai, Tsar Balcham Dairai. So yeah, that's all wonderful. But bottom line is, when you need something, you do not concern yourself with the pain of an animal. That's what the Ramban writes. And therefore, let's say, before the shir, I was looking for a pen to write down the names. So Ramban says, a very simple eitzah. If you need a pen, and there's a duck walking by, a kachka, and the duck has more than enough feathers to go around. Now, does anybody know, what will a duck do if you pluck its feather? Anybody want to demonstrate? David, no? Right?
I'm afraid.
Right? Well, if it hurts the duck. Bottom line, the duck is going to quack. The duck is not going to enjoy having a feather. Says the Ramah, halach l'maisa. U'lechein, mutter limroit noitzos me'avozos chayos v'lekol amechash mishum tsar balei chayim. You need a pen? You take a chicken, you take a turkey, you take a duck, pluck, and you write it. But it hurts. It hurts. So what? When human need begins, animal rights end. Right? So I don't think PETA would sponsor this year. So this year is sponsored by the sponsors we mentioned, but not by PETA. Okay? Okay. So that's what the Ramah writes. Despite the fact that it causes the animal tsar, you're allowed to do it. And Toisus, the Piskei Toisus in Masechta Avodah Zarah, writes explicitly, look at number 12, in Oisirav, Tsar Balei Chayim, Ein Asur Ela Kishemetzara B'li Revach. You know when Tsar Balei Chayim is Asur? When you're walking down the street, and you see a squirrel, and you have nothing better to do with your life, and you throw a stone at the squirrel for no... But, if you need it, you need a squirrel, whatever you want. You have a Borsellino hat, and you need to catch a rabbit. You wear a strammel, you wear a spudik, or your wife wants a fur coat, and you're walking down the street, and you happen to see a deer, or you happen to see an animal, a furry creature. So what do? Are you allowed to kill the animal for a fur coat? Of course you are. The Ramah says you're allowed to do it. Any human need supersedes the pain of an animal, but you're causing them pain. But the Ramah said you could do it. Those are the legalities of the halacha. That where human need begins, whether it's refuah or shar devarim. And this goes so far, like this. Let's say the donkey, right? The donkey is laden with packages. He has, 1,000 years ago, so they took the donkey shopping. And you ever go shopping for Shabbos, you come out with like 5 boxes. So they put the boxes, there are like 4 cases of Coca-Cola in the boxes, and they put it on the donkey. And the donkey, wished it never came along for the ride. And who's passing by? The Gadol Hadar is passing by. So now, does the Gadol Hadar have to now help the donkey, unload the Coca-Cola? He has a long white beard. It's not real lefi chavodah for the tzaddik Hadar to be unloading this donkey. So what's the halacha? Does a zaken, is he required to alleviate the burden of a donkey? After all, he has to take lulav and esrog, and he has to wear tefillin. So does he have to help unload a donkey? Well, it's beneath his dignity. Well, since when? It doesn't matter if it's beneath his dignity. Kavod habriyos does not push off a mitzvah saseh d'oraisa. However, says the Ran, the Chidushei Haran in Bava Metzia Daf Lamed Gimel quotes the Ramban that now we're dealing with 2 principles. On the one hand, you have the principle of Tsar Balei Chayim d'oraisa. You have to alleviate the pain of the donkey. On the other hand, he's the Gadol Hadar. You ever hear of Kavod HaTorah? You have to honor the Torah also. So on the one hand, you have honor the donkey, and on the other hand, you have honor the Gadol Hadar. So says Ramban, people might not hold like this, that's it. But you got to give more honor to your Gadol Hadar than you do to your donkey. So it's not that a gadol hador doesn't have to honor, doesn't have to follow Tsar Baalei Chayim. But Kavod HaTorah supersedes Tsar Baalei Chayim. Says the Ran, I feel that when the Gemara says Zakein ve'eno lefi chvaydai, it doesn't just mean your regular run-of-the-mill Zakein. Usually when the Gemara says Zakein, it refers to a Talmud Chacham. Zakein means Zeh Shekana Chachma. Says the Ran, in this instance, Zakein means any old man. No old man has to unload a donkey. Why not? The answer is because it's a little bit beneath the dignity of an old man to start unloading a donkey. But what about Tsar Baalei Chayim? Says the Ran, whenever a human being has a need, we waive the needs of an animal. And this human being has a need. You know what the need is? He's 70 years old. Give him some respect. So since this is a matter of human need, what's the need? Dignity, human dignity. It says the Ran, Tsar Baalei Chayim is waived. So on the one hand, do we honor the life of an animal? Yeah, we would give it respect. We honor it. There's a mitzvah of shchita. We make a bracha on shchita. You can't eat the dam. Tsar Baalei Chayim is a raisa. However, the moment animal Tsar Baalei Chayim is interfering with the most basic even of human need, Tsar Baalei Chayim is waived. And the question is, how do we know that? If Tsar Baalei Chayim is a biblical principle, there is no biblical principle that's waived in the face of human needs. Let's say you have a guy who says, yeah, tefillin, but I don't really feel comfortable when my circulation is somewhat infringed by my tefillin, so I'm not going to wear tefillin. Right? He's Pasha Yisrael Begufan. He's not going to be in a good place in the next world. You have to wear tefillin every day. There's no such thing as human need superseding any mitzvah. Let's say a person says, learning, it's not for me. I like to do other. Too bad. That's a kach gazrani habar. That's what God decreed. So why is it, what's the source, that this biblical principle, Tsar Baalei Chayim, all of a sudden is waived in the place of human need? So, comes along the Das Kedoshim, Mi Buchach. He's in the back of the Shulchan Aruch, the Eshel Avram. And he offers the following source, that the needs of animals are waived as soon as there's human need. You know what the source is? The Torah says, don't plow shar v'chamor yachdav. It's an ox and a donkey together. It's klayim. That implies, what about an ox by itself? Could you plow with an ox? Is it halachically permissible to plow with an ox? Of course. You just can't plow with an ox and donkey together. Now, let me ask you a question, the Das Kedoshim said. You think it feels good to plow? You think it's pleasurable to plow? You think when the donkey is plowing, he's thinking, oh, this is what I always dreamed of, pulling 700 pounds the whole day. This is just me'ein tam gan eden. It's not pleasant to plow. You ever try? Try it. Get down on all four and attach yourself to your car. Right? Put the car in neutral and try. Try. It's not the whole day. So the fact that the Torah says you're allowed to plow, from there we see that if you have a need, you could cause pain to an animal. So comes along Rabbi Yaakov Breish in the Shalas Yeshuvas Chelkas Yaakov. He says, no, it doesn't hurt donkeys to plow. That's what they were created for. Lekach noitzartem. They were created to plow. Yisachar chamor gorem roivitz bein hamishpasayim. Donkeys, right? Human beings, they do their thing, and donkeys plow. It's not a tsar for a donkey to plow. So the Das Kedoshim says back, oh, wait a second. You ever try plowing with a donkey? You thought, Mr. Donkey, good morning. How you doing? You had a good sleep last night? Guess what? Today, we're going to go out to the field and we're going to plow. What does the donkey do? He looks at you and he doesn't budge. What do you need to do to get a donkey to plow? You got to kick him. You got to smack him. You got to whip him. If the Torah says you're allowed to plow, that means you're allowed to do what it takes to plow. It is impossible to plow unless you hurt the donkey. There's no other way to do it. And the fact that the Torah says you're allowed to plow, that means you're allowed to inflict pain on an animal for a human need. There's another tshuva from the 3-day Eish, Rabbi Yaakov Weinberg. He says, oh, wait a second. You want to say donkeys like to plow? But there are no animal unions, right? Let's say at the end of the day, let's say 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Do you have a mitzvah to go over the donkey? Donkey, were you having a hard day today? Maybe you want some dinner. Maybe you want to call it a day, donkey. You know? It's already, you've worked hard enough. Take an early weekend. Is there any halacha? Or let's say you see the donkey sweating in pain and agony. Is there any obligation at all to say, donkey, you know what? Take it easy. There's no such thing. There's no such thing. You're allowed to work an animal as hard as you want, as much pain as inflicted, mutter l'chatchila. You don't think twice about it. From there we see that animal rights are waived as soon as human need begins. The Vilna Gaon brings down, he comments on the Ramah. Again, the Ramah said, for any refuah, for any human need, we waive Tzar Balei Chaim. The Gra marshals 3 Gemaras in Shas to prove the Ramah's halacha. Well, I'll speak out one raya, one proof. The Gemara Masechta Shabbos says, anybody know? Anybody have any pets over here? Any pets? What do you have? A dog. Okay, but fine. But don't answer the next question. Okay? A dog. Most people who have dogs, they have a little problem. A dog usually needs to be neuterized. Are you allowed to neuter a dog? It's an Isser D'Oraisa. It's an Isser D'Oraisa. It's an Isser D'Oraisa. And it's a big problem because you can't have a dog if it's not, otherwise it gives you big problems. Unfortunately, one of the most common shilas I get is about, I wish people would ask more important things, but about how to take care of a dog. Okay, maybe there are ways you could sell it to a guy, I don't know, that has to be discussed with the Rav. Somebody once asked the Rav whether you're allowed to smoke. After all, smoking, you're inflicting harm on yourself, either the Surgeon General. So the Rav said, yeah, you sell your lungs to a guy. So then but you're not allowed to smoke. But what about selling your animal to a guy? That's a big sugya. Big sugya. So what if there's a rooster, and you have a lot of chickens, and this rooster is causing you big problems. He's running around, and he's disturbing the equilibrium of the coop. And the only answer is you got to make sure this rooster becomes an akar. You have to take care of the rooster. But you know how to do that. It's an Isser D'Oraisa. You can't neuterize the rooster. So what do? Says the Gemara Masechta Shabbos. You take the comb of the rooster, that crown, you rip it off, and then the rooster is rendered pretty much incompetent. Yeah, he can't do it anymore. So the question is, now, how does it feel to the rooster when you rip off that comb? It hurts. But how are you allowed to do that? Are you making no? It's a grama, so that you're allowed to do it. You're not directly. So the Gemara, so we see from here, says the Vilna Gaon, that you have a need. So because I have a need, I'm allowed to torture the rooster? The answer is yes. You have a need. You have chickens. You can't have the rooster running around there. You're allowed to rip off the comb. But you're causing agony to the rooster. That's life. That's the halacha. That's what you're allowed to do. It's mutter to do it. Okay? And that is, says the Vilna Gaon, the source of the Ramah, that where human need begins. So you say, so don't deal with chickens. Sell life insurance. You have to sell eggs. You have to sell. So become an accountant. Well, and I have to, because I want to sell chickens. No, the rooster has to suffer? Yeah. It's a reasonable thing to be a chicken dealer. It's a very reasonable profession. If anybody's looking for a profession, consider chicken dealing. And if you have a rooster that's causing you tsaras, you take care of the rooster. Okay. Then let us come to the question about whether you're allowed to experiment with medical treatments or medicine or medication. Now you can imagine, as primitive as medicine is today, 200 years ago you could just imagine the kind of medication they were experimenting with, right? So there was a certain doctor by the name of Reb David Wiesel. Reb David Wiesel, right? He was the doctor. And he asked the Shvus Yaakov whether he could experiment with cats and dogs for his medications before, he was worried if he would give the medication to an Adam, the Adam would be Adam ki yamos ba'ayel, right? The Adam wouldn't be around anymore. And so instead he wanted to experiment with dogs and cats. So the Shvus Yaakov quotes the Gemara in Chulin that Rabbi Chia had a problem with yanivas. You know what a yaniva is? A yaniva is a worm. The worms were infesting his flax. So he comes to Rebbe, and Rebbe says there's a simple eitzah. Whenever I have a yaniva problem, this is what I do. You take a chicken, you shech the chicken on a bucket of water, the blood goes into the bucket, the worms smell the blood, they crawl out of the flax and they crawl to the blood. So now, you're happy, the flax is happy, the worms are happy, everyone's happy except the chicken. The poor chicken had to die because of your yanivas, right? So says the Shvus Yaakov, what do you see from here? That it is permitted to inflict tsar and kill. And you could kill an animal for you have financial gain, you could kill an animal. Now, this might not be such a clear proof, because, let me ask you the following question. Any hunters in here? Anybody here is a hunter? No, really? No? Anybody hunt animals for a living? Anybody do it for recreation? No, not fish. So they asked the Rabbi Yehuda. So Tshuva Rabbi Yehuda Madura Tinyana Yardea Siman Yod. Is the Jew allowed to go hunting? Right? I think hunting season is coming. Hunting season is upon us. And, you could go out into the forest, catch a deer, venison, a beer. It looks good over the dining room table. It really adds to the Shabbos spirit when you put a moose. It looks good. You have, in the cabinet, you have the leichter and the menorah, maybe an esrog. You have a moose head. And the question, are you allowed to go hunting? So somebody says to the Rabbi Yehuda, Tsar Balei Chayim. No, Rabbi Yehuda said, no. Tsar Balei Chayim. But when you go hunting, the animal's not Chayim anymore. There is no Isser of Tsar Balei Chayim to kill an animal. It's only if it stays alive. Yeah, but not if his head is in your living room. He's not alive then. That's really a good decoration, to have a living moose in the... Right?
Hunting just for that?
Right? So the Rabbi Yehuda says, you cannot prohibit hunting because of Tsar Balei Chayim, because when the animal is dead, it really does not experience too much pain when it's dead. Right? Once the animal... The Rabbi Yehuda's opinion is there's no Tsar Balei Chayim to kill an animal. It's only if the animal's alive. And he brings a proof. Bal Tashchis. Rabbi Yehuda says, Bal Tashchis. It's Bal Tashchis not to go hunting. Here you have a moose in the forest. How is it benefiting the world? Because it's roaming around in the forest? No. You kill it, you take its hide, you take its skin, you use it. So it's the opposite of Bal Tashchis. So Rabbi Yehuda says to hunt is not Tsar Balei Chayim. It's not Bal Tashchis. He says, though, it's not the most ethical career. You don't find in the Tanakh too many individuals who are hunters. You don't find any tzaddikim. The only people you find hunters in the Tanakh were Esav and Nimrod. So we don't necessarily see that this is the career path of choice for the observant Jew. But nevertheless, you can't say it's an usher. Maybe it's a waste of time, and it might be problematic for other reasons. You might be endangering your life because you're there. You're like ambushing the deer. Meanwhile, there's like a bear in back of you about to eat you. So it's not really a wise thing to go hunting. Or you're hunting the deer, the other hunter is hunting you. But you want to say tsar b'alei chayim, the Rabbi Yehuda holds, there's no tsar b'alei chayim to kill an animal. It's only if the animal's alive. And therefore the Shvus Yaakov's proof from killing the chicken to save your flax from the yanivas, the Rabbi Yehuda probably would say is not a proof. However, the Shvus Yaakov concludes the following. And here's where the shiur turns. So we started elevating and magnifying the importance of tsar b'alei chayim. Then we took it the other direction. We said, yeah, but as soon as you need something, we don't care about animals. But now we're going to turn back. And here's where things become fun. Okay? But we did not read the last words of the Ramah. The Ramah said, despite the fact that if you need a pen, you could pluck your duck, says the Ramah, Mikal Makoim Ha'olam Nimnoim Tahavi Achzorius. Yeah, you want to inflict harm on an animal? You're allowed to. You need a pen? Pluck the duck. That's Me'ikar Hadin. But should you do it? You shouldn't do it. Because it's cruel. Not because the animals have rights, but because it's not proper for you. It's cruelty for you. So if that's the case, says the Shvus Yaakov, how could you start experimenting with these medicine with a cat, and you're going to give the cat and a dog some kind of pill that in moments he might like explode? It's achzorius. It's cruel. If you shouldn't pluck a feather from a duck, maybe you shouldn't give your concoctions to an animal, your experiments to an animal. Says the Shvus Yaakov, no. It's only cruel to take a duck and pluck the feather, because right then and there, it immediately feels pain. And you're doing it biyadayim. But you want to give some kind of potentially dangerous medication to an animal, where at that moment, nothing's going to happen to the animal. Maybe in the morning the animal won't wake up. That's not miyad. It's not biyadayim. It's only grama. That not only is mutter, it's not achzorius, and you're allowed to do it. In other words, the Ramah's warning that it is still cruel to inflict pain on animals, that's only if the cruelty is happening right then and there, in the moment, with your own hands. Comes Rabbi Yehuda Yaakov Weinberg, he says, no. That's not the point. The point is not, well, if you're not inflicting the pain immediately, then it's not achzorius. The point is like this. You know how to take the pen, you know how to pluck the duck. Because who needs the pen? You need the pen. So you need the pen, so go to the store and buy a pen. You want to hurt the duck so you can have a pen? That's between you and the duck. You're allowed to do it, but it's a little bit cruel. But now you're dealing with mankind. You're dealing with medication. You're dealing with a product that could help people in general. So you want to be nice to an animal? That's your geschichte. That's your business. But now you're going to be nice to the animal at the expense of other people? You're not allowed to do that. You want to be a chassid and be nice to animals? First thing, be a chassid and be nice to people. You're only entitled to worry about the cruelty of animals if you're the only one who stands to gain. You need a pen, so you get a pen somewhere else. But what if mankind needs something from the animal? Whether it's a medicine, whether it's a product, you have no right to trump mankind's need because your personal feeling, your personal affinity to animals. So therefore, yes, it's midas chasidus to try to deal with animals berachmanas. But that's where you're the only person who's going to gain. But what if, but if other people stand to gain, you have no right to do that. Okay. So they bring the following question to Moshe Feinstein. The guy, he comes home, and he has pests in his home. He has termites. He has water bugs. He has roaches. He has other pests in his house. Are you allowed to call an exterminator? After all, the Ramah says, You're allowed to inflict pain on animals, but it's not midas chasidus. So maybe big tzaddikim should not call the exterminator. Says Rav Moshe, to kill creepy crawling things, things that bother you, flies, mosquitoes, gnats. There is no isser. To kill mice, to kill rats, to kill raccoons. There's no isser. Aye. But the Ramah says it's a milsa de chasidus not to cause them harm. Well, what about your wife and kids? They're every time they see one of those things, they jump on top of the bunk bed and they start hollering, start screaming. So you're worried about the mouse. Why don't you worry about your family? So you have no right to protect the needs of these creatures at the expense of the other human beings who would like to stay living in your house. And therefore, Rav Moshe says, there is no inyan whatsoever to refrain from calling the exterminator. Right? So, this year is not sponsored by PETA, but it is sponsored by Exterminators USA. Okay? So, the Rav Moshe says it is permitted to call an exterminator. Because, says Rav Moshe, the Ramah Paskins Lamaisa, where human need begins, animal rights end. And even it goes so far, Rav Moshe says. We know that if it's beneath someone's dignity to help and alleviate the pain of an animal, he doesn't have to do it. So therefore, Rav Moshe says, you're allowed to get rid of any creepy crawling, any critters, any things that compromise your comfort in your home. Comes along Rav Moshe, and Rav Moshe says a big chiddush. Says Rav Moshe, nevertheless, even though you could kill a pest, don't do it with your own hands. Don't do it with your own hands. So for example, you have a mouse in the house, don't go around with a big club, bam, right? Or let's say a guy says, oh, I have rodents. So he takes out his machine gun, right? He puts on a big mask, and he starts, shooting up. No. It says Rav Moshe, you're allowed to call an exterminator. You should set a trap. You should put out poison. But don't kill them with your own hands. Why not? Says Rav Moshe. Because Chazal tell us that even when you kill an Ir Hanidachas, a city of people who are liable to the death penalty, the Torah says, B'nasan l'cha rachamin v'richamcha, that God will bless you with the midah of mercy. Why is that necessary? Rav Moshe cites Ar Chaim HaKadosh, because if you kill someone, even though the Torah allows you to kill them, naturally you will be ingrained with the midah of achzarius, cruelty. And the Torah has to promise you that since you're allowed to kill them, God will protect you and bestow you the midah of mercy. However, says Rav Moshe, that's when there's a mitzvah to kill someone. But even though you're allowed to call an exterminator, it's not a mitzvah to kill the animal. And since it's not a mitzvah, says Rav Moshe, you should not kill the pest with your own hands. You could set a trap, and you could set poison. Don't take the animal and say, wring its neck. Don't do it. Says Rav Moshe, the Gemara Masechta Shabbos says that Rav Nachman had lice. And he told his daughters, he said, kill those rascals. And I want to hear them scream. I want to hear the cry of my enemy. So you see, you're allowed to kill animals with your own hands. Says Rav Moshe, that's because there's no such thing as lice traps or lice poison. There's only one way to get rid of lice, with your bare hands. But if you have another creature that you could get rid of through a grama or through an indirect method, or have someone else kill them, better not to do it with your own hands. Now listen to this. Says Rav Moshe, what's my source for this? Says Rav Moshe, I have no makar, not in Shas, not in Poskim, that it's better not to kill the insect with your own hand. He says, V'af shaloi matzasi zeh befeirush be'eza makoy. Even though I have no source. So you see the honesty of Rav Moshe. Rav Moshe is telling you that I did not see this anywhere. I did not really infer this. And nevertheless, toiv lehisnahig kain b'makom she'efshar. If you can, better to avoid killing the creature with your own hands. So this is very interesting. So Moshe is saying, you have something that bothers you. If you can, try to maybe trap it with a cup, try to lay a poison, lay a trap. But for you to be the one to be noitel neshama, are you allowed to? Absolutely. It's mutter lechatchila. But it's better not to. It's Sukkos. It's Yom Tov of Sukkos. Yom Tov proper. And you have this mosquito that keeps on landing on you. And you know that in a few seconds you're going to have a big bite. What do? So we would say, shoo it away. Could you kill a bug on Shabbos?
No.
Of course not. If two Eidim warn you, don't kill the ant on your finger, and you kill the ant. When Bezdin was strong, you know what we would do to you? We would skila. For killing an ant on Shabbos, it's netilas neshama. But says Reb Shmuel Kamenetsky in his Sefer Kovetz Halachos, on Yom Tov, you're allowed to kill a bug that's bothering you. You say kill a bug? But on Shabbos, you're chayiv misa. And on Yom Tov, you're allowed to do it? Yeah. Because on Yom Tov, there's a principle of mitoich. Are you allowed to shecht an animal on Yom Tov? Yeah. But you say, well, that's because you need to eat the animal. I'm not eating the fly. But there's a rule. Mitoich shehutra l'tzayrech, hutra nami shaloi l'tzayrech. So they asked Reb Shmuel Kamenetsky, where'd you get this halacha from? You're allowed to kill a bug on Shabbos? So he said, on Yom Tov, thank you. He said he heard this psak from Rav Ruderman, Rosh Hashiva of Ner Yisrael. But it's a Beferish Mishnah Berurah. The Mishnah Berurah says explicitly that the law of mitaich applies not only to cooking. It's not only mitaich shehutra. It's not only you're allowed to light a fire. You're allowed to use a fire for food, so you could use it for other things. It says in Mishnah Berurah, mitaich applies to havara, to bishul, to afia, and to shchita. So Mishnah Berurah says explicitly. Presumably, you could kill a bug that's bothering you on Yom Tov. In Rav Yaakov Kamenetsky's notes on Shulchan Aruch, Rav Yaakov Kamenetsky quotes the Mishnah Berurah, and he says, based on the Mishnah Berurah, it would seem that if a bug is bothering you on Yom Tov, bam, you kill the bug. However, says Rav Yaakov Kamenetsky, tsar chiyan. He's not ready to endorse this halacha. So I found in a sefer called Meged Givay Soilam, that he was with Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky on Yom Tov, and a mosquito landed on him, and Rabbi Yaakov killed the bug. So, Rabbi Shmuel, who's saying you're allowed to, it's not just Rabbi Ruderman, and it's not just Mishnah Berurah, apparently, maybe conceptually Rabbi Yaakov had trouble with the Mishnah Berurah, but bottom line, as reported by an eyewitness, by Rav Shorkin, from Shiur Torah Moshe, he was there. He saw Rabbi Yaakov kill the bug on Yom Tov. There's a tshuva in Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach's tshuvas in the Mincha Shlomo. Whether are you allowed to kill a bug on Yom Tov that's bothering you? He says, Me'ikar Adin, you're allowed to. You're allowed to. But he says, maybe you shouldn't do it, because if you kill a mosquito that's bothering you, you may end up killing a mosquito that's not bothering you. But certainly, Me'ikar Adin, you're allowed to kill a bug. So I ask you a simple question. Rabbi Yaakov, right? He argues on Rav Moshe. Rav Moshe said that whenever possible, don't kill the animal with your own hands. Better to do it through a grama or trap it. So why was Rabbi Yaakov killing the ant? Well, he argued on Rav Moshe. Rabbi Yaakov held it's okay to kill the animal with your own hand. The answer is it's Yom Tov. You can't trap the bug on Yom Tov. Trapping is an Isser D'Oraisa on Yom Tov. You don't have an alternative. The only thing you could do on Yom Tov to the bug is kill it. Rav Moshe agrees you're allowed to, just if you have no alternative, if you have another alternative, you should try to use another alternative. Okay. So it would seem pretty clear that whenever human beings have a need, that is where animal rights end. But we're going to speak out one last tshuva. And this is a very interesting tshuva, an amazing tshuva. And in a way it makes us reconsider the whole principle that animal rights are waived in the face of human need, but still we're going to come out with a very decisive conclusion. And Moshe was asked about something called white veal. What is white veal? A lot of people, they don't like to eat meat. They think it's unhealthy, especially red meat. Right? People are conditioned to think red meat is unhealthy. So what did meat sellers do? They created something called white veal. White veal, basically, you make the cow anemic. You stop it from producing red blood cells. So the meat is white and not red. How do you do that? You don't let the cow drink milk. You don't let it eat grass. You feed it fatty foods that are terrible for the cow. And they don't let the cow move. So the cow's muscles never strengthen and the meat is very soft. So it looks white. And they basically torture these calves. They don't give it normal food. They don't give it... So they asked Rav Moshe, are you allowed to create the white veal? So first Rav Moshe wants to know, are you allowed to eat white veal? Says Rav Moshe, you cannot eat white veal. Because he spoke to sheichtim. And most good sheichtim say that out of 100 calves that they try to produce white veal, 85 of them have a mortal wound, our treifa. They're so weak, they have holes in their lungs. And says Moshe, and even the liberal sheichtim, liberal meaning the ones that are lenient about this, at most they say 55 of them, 45 of the cows are good. Only 45. So says Moshe, here you have it. The Gemara says in general, there's a chazaka, an animal is not a treifa. And these calves are bechezkas treifa. The majority of them have mortal wounds. Says Moshe, and this is just in the lungs that you could see. Says Moshe, even the lungs that you check that are good, you have to assume there are holes in the intestines. And the intestines cannot really be checked properly. Says Rav Moshe, you may not eat this. It's likely to be a treifa. But even more than that, says Rav Moshe, you cannot produce white veal. Why not? But the Rama says that whenever there's a human need, animal rights are dismissed and waived. Says Rav Moshe, it has to be a legitimate human need. And there is no legitimate human need to eat meat that's white. What planet do you come from? Meat is red. It's not a human need. Says Rav Moshe, it's a hoax. It's a scam. It's a harama. It's not a real thing. So because people want to milk people, no pun intended, for money, they want to squeeze money out of people. So they make up this thing that they're going to make meat that's white. That's not a legitimate human need. Says what? Hunting is not. You're not killing it. That's the Rabbi Yehuda said. Actually, hunting, you're killing the animal. Killing is not sar b'alei the Rabbi Yehuda says, right? Yeah. Okay. So it says Rav Moshe, Haga v'atzmacha. Let's say a guy comes to you. This is very interesting. Oh, but before that, let's say you're really angry one day, and you need to release your tension, and you want to take a baseball bat and club a cow over the head. And this way you'll come home, benachas, meyushav, relaxed, and they'll ask you, what happened? You had a good day? Yeah, everything is Baruch Hashem okay. Says Rav Moshe, that's tzar b'alei chayim. What do you mean? You have a need. No, you don't have a need to beat the living daylights out of a cow. But you need it. No, that's not a legitimate human need. But the Gemara says that koreya begada b'chamasa is mesakin. The Gemara says that if you rip a garment in your anger, that's not considered kilkel on Shabbos. It's tikkun. Says Rav Moshe, that's regarding the garment. But to recognize as a legitimate need, you have a need to be cruel to an animal? You can't do that. That's not a recognized need. Now listen to this. What Rav Moshe says, what if a guy comes to you and says, I need to kill an animal. Here's $10,000 because I need to kill an animal. So Moshe says, are you allowed to be a shoichet for goyim? Yeah, you can be a shoichet for goyim. So that means you're allowed to inflict pain on an animal, even for a guy to eat. So could you now you could sit in Kailo the rest of your life. This guy will give you $1 million to beat up a cow. It says in Moshe, you can't take the money. It's an Isser Dairaisa. The fact that he wants to beat up a cow, that's not a legitimate need. Yeah, but for me to get $10,000, that's a legitimate need. No. But you're getting it through his illegitimate need. Says Rav Moshe, yes, the Ramah is correct. Where human need begins, Sar Baalei Chaim ends. But it has to be real. It has to be something legitimate. So then, let's say there's a cosmetic company. They already have 100 different types of this makeup. Now they want to make something that's waterproof. Is that a legitimate need? But it's going to torture the animal. I think it's reasonable. It's a legitimate need. Human beings need products. It's a legitimate thing. The Gemara values the need that a woman has for cosmetics. But the need to inflict pain, that's not a recognized legitimate need. But here, what do you mean? Rabbi Moshe said, but we want to sell healthy meat to people. So Moshe said, the meat's not healthy. It's disgusting. It's a harama. It's a hoax. It's a scam. Meat is red. If the meat is not red, so you might as well eat a soy burger. But you can eat a white veal. You want white veal? Take your salami and paint it white. That's what you could do. But now you're going to cause tsar to the cow. Now the poor cow can't walk around. Says Rav Moshe, this is not a recognized human need. So here's the bottom line. Bottom line is that one is not allowed to indiscriminately cause pain to an animal. For no reason at all, you're walking down the street and you get a kick out of it, you can't do it. You can't do it. You can't cause pain to an animal. We value the life of an animal. An animal is a creation of Hashem. Whenever a human being has legitimate need, one does not think twice. There's no, now, to do it with your own hands, in a case where it's cruel, so then possibly it's best to avoid doing it directly. If you could do it indirectly, that's all the better. But something that is not legitimately recognized, that is where Tsar Baalei Chaim stands up in full force. But a person has to be very careful, because anytime somebody gets carried away with protecting the rights of an animal, what they're doing is they're undermining the importance and the rights and the primacy of Adam, of man, in creation. And certainly, as important and as valuable as animals are, they are not on the same strata as Adam. The world was created for Adam, and everything in this world was created for the service of an Adam. And at the highest level, when a human being makes use of an animal, they're actually elevating the animal. You're doing the animal a favor. When you eat that piece of chicken on Shabbos, you're elevating the animal from a behema to an Adam. So, I wish you all a wonderful evening.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.